Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Emma, and I'm here with Max. Today, we're talking about something really exciting: how to master English in less time. You might think learning a new language takes forever, but with the right approach, it can be faster and more fun.
That's right, Emma. I think one of the first things we should talk about is setting goals. A lot of people start learning English but don't have a clear goal in mind. Setting small, realistic goals can help you stay on track. For example, instead of saying, "I want to speak English fluently," which is a big goal, you could say, "I want to learn 10 new words this week." What do you think?
Exactly, Max. I love that idea. Small goals help you feel successful, and that keeps you motivated. And when you're motivated, you'll learn faster. Another thing that helps is making English part of your daily life. You don't need to study for hours every day, but you should use English every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes.
Yes, you can watch short videos in English, listen to music, or even change the language on your phone. Small changes like that can help you get used to the language. You don't always need to be in a classroom to learn.
That's such a good point. You know, speaking of using English every day, practicing with a partner or in a group can really speed up your learning. When you practice with others, you can learn new words, practice pronunciation, and also build confidence. You can join online groups, find a language buddy, or even talk to yourself. I know it sounds funny, but it works.
It does work. Talking to yourself helps you practice without any pressure. Also, when you're learning, it's important to focus on things that are useful to you. If you like cooking, learn English words for cooking. If you like sports, learn vocabulary related to sports. That way, learning feels more personal and enjoyable.
I agree, Max. When you learn things that interest you, it's not only easier, but it's more fun. And speaking of fun, let's talk about how to make learning more enjoyable. Some people get frustrated when they don't understand everything, but it's okay to not know every word. The key is to keep going and not give up.
That's so true. It's totally normal to not understand everything at first. But don't be afraid to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are one of the best ways to learn. If you say something wrong, it's okay, you can correct it and learn from it. Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a language.
Absolutely. Making mistakes is part of the process. The important thing is to keep speaking, keep trying, and keep learning. Another tip for mastering English faster is to focus on speaking more than writing. Of course, writing is important, but if you want to communicate in everyday situations, speaking is key. And the more you speak, the faster you'll improve.
Speaking is definitely key, and you don't have to speak perfectly. It's more important to be understood than to be perfect. People will understand you even if your grammar isn't perfect or if you make small mistakes. What matters is that you're trying and improving.
Exactly. Communication is the goal, not perfection. And that brings me to another point: don't stress too much about grammar. Yes, grammar is important, but when you're learning to speak, it's okay to make mistakes with grammar. It's better to try speaking and get your point across than to stay silent because you're worried about being perfect.
I think that's something a lot of people forget. They get nervous about grammar and then they stop trying. But the more you speak, the better you'll get, and your grammar will improve naturally over time. It's all part of the learning process.
Exactly, Max. And you know what else helps? Reading. Reading simple books, articles, or even social media posts in English can help you improve quickly. You learn new words, see how sentences are structured, and it also helps you understand how native speakers use the language.
Yes, reading is fantastic, and it doesn't have to be difficult. Start with something simple, and over time you can read more challenging things. Even reading just 5 or 10 minutes a day can make a big difference. Plus, it's another way to learn in a relaxed way without feeling like you're studying.
I love that, Max. Reading can be really relaxing and enjoyable. And there are so many free resources online, so you don't even need to buy books if you don't want to. There are articles, stories, and blogs about anything you're interested in. The key is to find something you enjoy.
That's true, and while we're talking about different ways to learn, let's not forget listening. Listening to English, whether it's through podcasts, TV shows, or movies, is a great way to improve your understanding. The more you listen, the more familiar you become with the way people speak, the rhythm of the language, and new words.
Yes, and even if you don't understand everything, that's okay. Just keep listening. Over time, you'll start to pick up more and more. It's also helpful to listen to things you enjoy, like your favorite shows or songs. That way, it doesn't feel like studying, it's just part of your daily routine.
That's such a good point. When learning becomes part of your everyday life, you'll improve without even realizing it. Whether it's speaking, listening, reading, or watching, the key is to keep going and enjoy the process. So, where were we? Oh yeah, we were talking about how to make learning English part of your daily life. Another important thing I want to mention is vocabulary. One thing that really helps is learning words in context, not just memorizing them from a list. When you learn new words, it's useful to see them in a sentence or a conversation. That way, you understand how they're used. What do you think, Emma?
I completely agree, Max. When you learn words in context, you also learn the situations where those words are used. For example, you might learn the word delicious, but instead of just knowing it's a word for good food, it's better to see it in a sentence. Like, this pizza is delicious. It sticks in your memory better because you can picture yourself using it in real life. And one of the best ways to do that is through reading, like we mentioned earlier.
Exactly, and speaking of vocabulary, let's talk about repetition. Repeating words and phrases is really important. You might learn a word today, but if you don't see or use it again soon, you'll forget it. So, it's a good idea to review new words regularly. There's something called spaced repetition, which means reviewing words at different times like today, tomorrow, next week, and so on. It helps you remember them longer.
That's such a great tip, Max. Repeating words over time really helps them stick. And I want to add something here. Don't try to learn too many new words at once. If you try to learn 50 new words in one day, you'll probably forget most of them. But if you focus on learning just a few words really well, you're more likely to remember them. Quality over quantity is key when it comes to vocabulary.
I love that idea, Emma. It's so true. Learning a few words deeply is better than cramming into many at once. And once you've learned a new word, try to use it as much as possible. For example, if you learn the word interesting, try to use it in your conversations that day. You could say, "This book is interesting," or "That movie was interesting." The more you use it, the more natural it will feel.
Yes, using new words in real conversations is one of the best ways to make them stick. You don't even need to use them with other people at first. You can write sentences with your new words or even say them out loud to yourself. It might feel a little funny at first, but it really works. Also, when you use new words, you get more confident in using them in different situations.
Confidence is a big part of learning a language, isn't it? I think a lot of people feel shy when they're speaking English because they don't want to make mistakes. But the truth is, the more you practice, the more confident you'll feel. And that confidence will help you learn even faster. It's kind of like a cycle: more practice, more confidence, and then even more learning.
Absolutely, Max. Confidence makes a huge difference. And even if you're not confident at first, that's okay. Just keep going. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. I also think it helps to remind yourself that it's okay to not be perfect. Nobody is perfect when they're learning something new, and that's part of the fun. The more you enjoy the process, the faster you'll learn.
Yes, enjoying the process is key. You know, something else that can really help speed up your learning is setting a routine. If you make English part of your routine like 10 or 15 minutes every day, it becomes a habit. And when it's a habit, you don't even think about it anymore, you just do it. It's like brushing your teeth, you don't need to plan for it, you just do it.
That's a great comparison, Max. Building a routine is so important. Even if you're busy, you can fit in a few minutes of English practice each day. Like you said, it doesn't have to be hours of study. It could be something simple, like reading an article, watching a short video, or listening to a podcast on your way to work. Little moments of practice every day add up over time.
Exactly, and those little moments are powerful because they help you stay connected to the language. Another thing I want to mention is finding ways to keep yourself motivated. Learning a language can sometimes feel slow, especially when you don't see results right away. But if you set small goals, like we talked about earlier, and reward yourself when you reach them, it can keep you excited about learning.
That's a great point, Max. Celebrating your progress is so important. Maybe you set a goal to learn 20 new words this month, and at the end of the month, you treat yourself to something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be anything big, just something that makes you feel good and reminds you that you're getting better at English.
Yes, celebrating progress keeps you motivated and makes the learning process more fun. And don't forget, progress isn't just about learning new words or grammar rules. It's also about feeling more comfortable with the language. Maybe you had a conversation in English today and felt more confident than last week. That's progress too.
Exactly. Progress isn't always about big milestones. It's about the little steps forward that add up over time. You know, one more thing I want to talk about is pronunciation. A lot of learners worrying about their pronunciation, and while it's important to speak clearly, it's okay if your accent isn't perfect. What's important is that people can understand you. What do you think, Max?
I totally agree, Emma. Your accent doesn't have to be perfect, and actually, everyone has an accent. Even native speakers have different accents depending on where they're from. So, don't worry too much about sounding exactly like a native speaker. Focus more on speaking clearly and being understood. And if you want to improve your pronunciation, there are simple ways to practice.
Yes, there are. One way is to listen carefully to native speakers and try to copy the way they say things. You can listen to podcasts, watch videos, or even use language learning apps that help you with pronunciation. Another way is to record yourself speaking and then listen to it. That way, you can hear what you sound like and practice improving little by little.
That's a great tip. Emma, listening to yourself can be really helpful because sometimes you don't realize how you sound until you hear it. And don't be afraid to try new sounds, even if they feel a bit strange at first. Your mouth and tongue need time to get used to the new sounds of English, but with practice, it gets easier.
Absolutely. And it's okay if it takes time. Pronunciation, like everything else in language learning, is something you improve over time. So be patient with yourself. The important thing is to keep practicing and not to get discouraged if it doesn't sound perfect right away.
Patience is key. Learning any language takes time, but by using these techniques, practicing daily, focusing on useful vocabulary, repeating words, and working on pronunciation, you can speed up the process. And like we said before, the most important thing is to enjoy the journey. If you're having fun while learning, you'll make progress without even realizing it.
I couldn't agree more, Max. Enjoying the process is everything. When you look at learning English as something fun and exciting rather than as a chore, it becomes easier to stick with it. It's about building a positive relationship with the language and making it part of your life in a way that works for you.
All right, now that we've covered so many great tips in the last two parts, let's dive even deeper into how you can keep improving your English every day. One thing that really stands out for me is immersion. A lot of people think that you can only immerse yourself in a language by living in a country where that language is spoken, but that's not true at all. You can create an English-speaking environment right at home. What do you think about that, Emma?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Max. Immersion is definitely something anyone can create, no matter where they live. It's all about surrounding yourself with English as much as possible. For example, you can listen to English radio stations, watch TV shows and movies in English, or even follow social media accounts in English. The more you hear and see the language, the more natural it becomes for you. It doesn't matter if you don't understand every single word at first, just being around the language helps.
Exactly. And when you do that, it's not just about listening passively. It's also about interacting with the language as much as possible. If you're watching a show, you can pause it to repeat certain phrases or words that are new to you. Or if you're reading a blog post, you can take notes of any interesting vocabulary you come across and try to use it later. It's about being an active learner, not just a passive one.
That's a really important point, Max. Being active in your learning can make a huge difference. Sometimes people think they're not making progress because they're only listening or reading. But when you start interacting with the material, like speaking out loud, writing down your thoughts, or even mimicking the speakers, you engage with the language in a deeper way. This also helps your brain process the language faster.
Absolutely. And one more thing that's important about immersion is variety. Don't just stick to one type of content. If you always watch the same type of show or listen to the same kind of podcast, you might get stuck in a routine. But if you mix it up, maybe watch a documentary one day, listen to music the next, and then read an article the day after, you'll expose yourself to different types of language. Each type of content uses different vocabulary and sentence structures, which helps broaden your skills.
That's such a great idea. Variety keeps things interesting too. You won't get bored if you switch things up regularly. And speaking of variety, another great way to learn faster is to focus on real-world language. I mean, textbook English is helpful for learning grammar rules and basic vocabulary. But when it comes to everyday conversations, the language you hear in real life is often quite different. It's more informal and relaxed. Watching real-life content like interviews, reality shows, or even vlogs can give you a sense of how people actually speak.
Yes, real-world English is often very different from what you might learn in textbooks. People use slang, shorten words, and speak faster in everyday conversations. Listening to how people actually talk helps you understand those small details that make a big difference in real conversations. And the more you expose yourself to natural language, the better prepared you'll be when you speak with native speakers or other English learners.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use the language in real-life situations, even if you feel like you're not ready. One of the best ways to learn is by talking to people, whether it's through online language exchanges with friends or even with strangers in a safe environment. I know it can feel intimidating, but the more you put yourself out there, the more confident you'll become. And every conversation is a learning opportunity.
That's so true, Emma. It's all about taking small risks and stepping out of your comfort zone. When you try to have real conversations, even if you make mistakes, you learn much more than if you just stayed silent. Plus, most people are really patient and understanding when you're learning a new language, so don't worry too much about making mistakes. In fact, sometimes making mistakes can lead to learning something new that you wouldn't have learned otherwise.
Exactly. Mistakes are part of the learning process. And when you're practicing conversations, it doesn't always have to be with native speakers. You can practice with other learners too. Sometimes speaking with other learners can actually feel less intimidating because you're both in the same situation, you're both learning. And it's a great way to motivate each other. You can correct each other's mistakes, share new words, and practice together.
That's a fantastic point. Emma, sometimes we think that we need to only practice with native speakers to improve, but practicing with fellow learners can be just as effective. You can create a comfortable environment where you both feel free to make mistakes, experiment with new vocabulary, and even role-play different situations. It's a great way to get more speaking practice without feeling too much pressure.
Yes, and you can also learn from each other's experiences. Maybe your language partner learned a new expression or a useful grammar rule that you didn't know about. Sharing what you learned can help both of you improve faster. It's like having a study buddy who's always there to help you stay motivated and on track.
Speaking of motivation, another thing that really helps is tracking your progress. Sometimes it can feel like you're not improving, especially when you're in the middle of learning, but if you keep track of what you've learned, whether it's new vocabulary, phrases, or even the number of conversations you've had, you'll see that you're actually making a lot of progress.
That's such a good idea, Max. Tracking your progress can be really motivating. You could keep a journal where you write down new words you've learned, or maybe even record yourself speaking in English once a month to see how much you've improved over time. When you look back, you'll realize how far you've come, and that can be a great confidence boost.
Yes, recording yourself is a brilliant way to track your progress. It's one thing to notice small improvements day by day, but when you listen to a recording from a few months ago and compare it to how you speak now, the difference can be really inspiring. Plus, it helps you identify areas where you still want to improve, like pronunciation or fluency.
And on top of that, remember to be patient with yourself. Learning a language is a journey, and sometimes it might feel like you're not progressing as fast as you'd like. But every little step you take gets you closer to mastering English. So even on days when you feel stuck or frustrated, keep going. The key is consistency.
Absolutely, Emma. Consistency is what makes the difference in the long run. You don't have to spend hours studying every day. Just a few minutes of practice can make a big impact over time. And the great thing about language learning is that it's always a work in progress. Even advanced learners and native speakers are still learning new things about English every day.
That's so true. Language is always evolving, and there's always something new to learn, no matter how good you get. And that's what makes it so exciting. You'll never run out of things to discover, whether it's new words, different ways of expressing ideas, or even cultural aspects of the language.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just about mastering the language. It's about enjoying the process of learning something new every day. So, to everyone listening, just remember, learning English doesn't have to be stressful. The more you relax, enjoy the process, and make it part of your everyday life, the faster you'll improve. And most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're your stepping stones to success.
Exactly, Max. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope these tips have been helpful and that you feel more confident about mastering English in less time. Remember, it's all about taking small, consistent steps, making learning fun, and staying motivated.
Yes, and don't forget to share your progress with us. We'd love to hear about your language learning journey. Feel free to leave comments and tell us what's been working for you. And before we go, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future episodes. We've got more helpful tips and fun content coming your way.
That's right. And if you found this podcast helpful, please share it with your friends and family who are also learning English. The more people we can help, the better. Thanks again for listening. And we wish you all the best on your English learning journey.
Goodbye, everyone. Keep learning and stay positive. You've got this.
Goodbye and take care. Keep practicing. And we'll see you next time.